All right, welcome to section 3. You've made it this far, and this is where we're going to start doing some really great things. And by the end of this section, you're going to start working on your own protagonist and antagonist for your final story. So from here on out, you're going to be slowly working toward building something that will be your final project. So everything we do from this point on is work on that. So that's going to be really fun. And so today, we're going to dive in and look at protagonists and antagonists and a few other key parts of story. So let's start with the protagonist. Now we've mentioned him loosely in the last section. Protagonist. Boom. Now, the protagonist can be a guy, it can be a girl, it can be a group of people, it can be a fish or an object like a lamp, it can be pretty much anything. It's whatever that we are rooting for in the story, the thing that the story is about. So you can pretty much make a protagonist out of any kind of thing that you want. But if I'm talking and I refer to him as he's, it's just a generic he. It can be whatever you want it to be. So that's the first interesting thing about a protagonist, is that the protagonist is merely the hero of the story, the person that we are going to vicariously live through it. And there are some key elements to a protagonist that the protagonist has to have. He has to have these different things. So the first thing is you must love him. So number one, you must love the protagonist. You have to like that person. You can't have them being a mean or a boring person, because nobody wants to live vicariously through a mean or a boring person. The protagonist has to be somebody that you want to be around, that you want to win, that you feel some empathy, maybe even a little sympathy towards the protagonist. You have to feel something towards him, her, it, whatever it happens to be. If you don't, you're not really going to want to watch the story or read the story or even care about it, because the protagonist is somebody that you don't like. So it's very important that when you write a protagonist character, it is somebody that the audience is going to learn to love and learn to like. For a great example, you have Lord of the Rings with little Frodo Baggins. You cannot not like Frodo Baggins. He's like this tall and he's cute with the little giant hairy feet. You can't not like him. They're just perfectly innocent little people. And so, yes, you're naturally drawn to him, and yes, his task is this huge task, and so you feel empathy toward him. You want him to succeed. You want him to win. We've been talking about Finding Nemo, and Finding Nemo, you want the little clownfish to succeed because, well, they're clownfish. How could you not want them to succeed? And it's about a father losing his son. Of course you want the father to find his son. It's within you to feel that way. In the terminal, we've got our Mr. Navorsky, and he is lost, poor guy, in a terminal, and he can't really do anything to control it. And so he's stuck there. And do we want him to get out and be able to go to New York and get home? Yes, we do. We feel so bad for him. He's in a bad situation. So you feel empathy toward him. You want him to accomplish his goals. You want him to win. So that's the first thing. Second thing, a protagonist needs to be willful. He needs to be willful. If he's not willful, then that would just make him a passive character. And a passive character doesn't really do much. Doesn't really have a lot of actions. If you're passive, it means you're not actively doing things. Willful means that the person is actually choosing to do things. They are making actions, that they're setting out to do them on their own. Now, the problem with having a passive protagonist is that as an audience, we're there reading it or watching it play out, and then when a pressure situation rises, we want our protagonist to do something. But if he's passive and he's just going to sit there and stare at it, well, then we're bored. We want to know. No, what are you going to do? What are you going to do to resolve this thing? What are you going to do to reach out and do something? And so when we watch that situation build and build and build, then when our protagonist does something and he acts, we get to see a little bit more about who he is, how he acts under pressure. And we see that, okay, he is actively doing something to accomplish his goal to restore the world back to the way it was, or at least to some sort of sense of balance. And so we needed him to be a willful person. So in Finding Nemo, the fish has to leave to go look for his son. If you had a passive protagonist in Finding Nemo, it would be, oh no, Nemo's taken. And the dad's like, oh no, that's horrible. I'm going to sit here in my little reefy thing and mourn about it. I mean, nobody wants to watch that. Then we want to see him know he's going to take off and he's going to go find his son. So the protagonist has to be willful. Third thing, the protagonist has to want something. So we'll just put want up here for you. Want. He has to want something. There's got to be a desire for the protagonist. He has to have something that he wants to go after, that he's wanting to seek. Now, a lot of the times, in romantic films, you've got a guy and he is wanting the girl. And so you have that generic thing. In Finding Nemo, you've got a father, he wants to find his son. And so there's a desire on the protagonist. He has to want something. Now, usually this plays out in two different ways. You can have an external want, external, and then you can have an internal desire. So there can be an actual physical thing that they want, but there's also this internal thing that they want. So we've been talking about Finding Nemo. And Finding Nemo, the external thing is he wants to find his son. It's a very physical thing. His son has been removed from him. At the same time, his internal need is that he wants to still know that his son is going to love him even as his son gets older and grows up and moves out of the reef, so to speak. It's dealing with that father-child dilemma. And so there's a want that he has, but it's both external and internal. And great protagonists have things that they want, and usually they are both those things. They're going to be something that they want that's a physical thing, and something that's internal in their mind that they want, something that they need to feel that they're going after. So you have to love them, they have to be willful, they have to want something, usually external or internal, and then the last, in the story, at some point in the story, they need a chance, we'll just put chance up here, to obtain it. At some point in the story, they need to have a chance to obtain what they want in the story. If that chance is never delivered to them, then we're going to feel really like the story is robbing us a little bit because we're watching it play out. We want our protagonist to win. We want him to accomplish his goals. We're feeling empathy toward him. We need him to have a chance to get it. If he's just never going to get it, it's really sad. It's almost like Charlie Brown and Lucy holding the football. And Charlie Brown's going to run up to kick the football, and Lucy always pulls it away. We always want her to have the chance to just leave the ball, let Charlie Brown kick the ball. We'd all feel better. I'd feel better, but no, Lucy never does it. But we really want her to. So in a story, we need our protagonist to have a chance to obtain the thing that he wants. We just saw that in the last section with the terminal when they had that conflict at the end with the guy who can't speak English and the goat and that whole thing. You have Mr. Navorsky has the chance. They make a deal. He's like, I'm going to let you out to New York if you help me. And so the chance is there he can obtain it. And we're all excited. Okay, all he has to do is go help. And he goes and helps. But then we see character build in our protagonist when he chooses no. I'm going to help the guy because his father is in a life and death situation. And we see a little bit about who he is and the fact that even though he has a chance to obtain his goal right then and there, he puts somebody else in front of himself. So now we even love him even more, but we still want him to be able to attain his goal. So another thing that we need to deal with the protagonist is our audience is going to end up spending a lot of time bonding with this person, with the protagonist. Your audience is going to spend, we know that they're going to have to love them, that they're going to feel this need to bond. So there's several greater things that we need to discuss with the protagonist. As the protagonist, we've discussed in story how you have the little arc, and the conflict is going to rise like this, kind of like mountains that they're going to have to cross over. Well, the greater the risk involved for our protagonist, then the greater the amount of conflict and the greater the story is going to be. So the thing is, when we put a thing out there that he wants, that he's willfully going to go and try to achieve the thing, we need to make the task nearly impossible. So for Finding Nemo, the father has to go find his lost son. What's the risk involved? Well, the risk is death. He's going to be risking his death, or life, I should say, risking his life over and over and over again because the ocean is a huge, scary place filled with sharks and jellyfish and all kinds of stuff. And so as a great protagonist, the things that he has to conquer have to be huge, huge things that there's a lot of risk involved. The more risk involved, the better we want to root for that character because it's kind of like, the underdog situation. We want them to accomplish something that we don't even know if they can accomplish it. So when we start the story, whenever you're writing a story and you're dealing with the protagonist, what you need to be careful of is that you have to make the risk that he's putting out there and achieving what he wants, the risk needs to be a pretty great thing. It cannot be a small risk. If the only thing that he's having to risk is a bad afternoon at grandma's house or something, well, then that's not really so bad. And so when we watch it, we're like, oh, well, that's kind of boring because if he does this, the worst that can happen is, well, he has to go and spend, time doing something he doesn't want to do. But if I say no, the protagonist, to achieve this goal, he's going to have to put his life on the line numerous times to try to accomplish this. Well, then, as the audience, we are engaged, we are feeling empathy toward our protagonist, and we have this desire to see him achieve, and we are going to live the story through him. We love him. We want him to be able to do it, and so let's go see what he can do. So all that is wrapped into the protagonist. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to take a look at a bunch a protagonist, and the first time we ever see them appear in these stories. Now we're going to show a lot of movie clips here because it's just easier to look at movies than it is to read a bunch of books while you're watching. That wouldn't work really well. So we're going to look at a bunch of film clips where you meet a protagonist in different stories, how you meet them, and whether or not what the writers do to make you feel empathy, to make you feel, oh, I like this guy already. So let's take a look. Okay, so this is going to be the first time that we see the protagonist for the film The Hobbit. And what I want you to notice right off the bat is just look at his appearance and his face, that he's likable, he's got something appealing to him, and then this whole conversation, look at how the writing compels us to kind of like him.
Good morning.
What do you mean? Do you mean to wish me a good morning, or do you mean that it is a good morning whether I want it or not? Or perhaps you mean to say that you feel good on this particular morning? Or are you simply stating that this is a morning to be good on?
All of them at once, I suppose.
So just notice how his world is balanced. This is his normal Hobbit life, and now Gandalf is showing up.
I'm looking for some.
And of course, an adventure is going to mess up the balance of his world.
An adventure? No, I don't imagine anyone west of Bree.
So notice how we already know he likes his world. There's an actual fence between him and Gandalf. Gandalf here is going to upset his world, his nice, pretty world. He's trying to ignore it.
Good morning.
To think that I should have lived to be good morning, my Belladonna Took's son, as if I were selling buttons at the door.
Beg your pardon?
You've changed, and not entirely for the better, Bilbo Baggins.
I'm sorry, do I know you?
But you know my name, although you don't remember I belong to it. I'm Gandalf. And Gandalf means... me.
Gandalf. Not Gandalf, the wandering wizard who made such excellent fireworks.
So we've already established here that
on Midsummer's Eve.
we could probably enjoy sitting down with Bilbo, having a conversation with him. He seems pleasant, nice, unassuming, humble. He's smoking an extra long pipe, which is very interesting.
Even if it's only my fireworks. Well, that's decided. It'll be very good for you. And most amusing for me. I shall inform them.
So here, notice, the opportunity for adventure is there, but he's willfully saying, no, I do not want this. This is going to upset my balance. Why don't you go do something else? And yet it's going to land on his lap regardless. So he goes in. Let's shut the door. Hopefully leave the adventure outside. But of course, that's not going to be the case. In the end, he's going to be drug along into it, and it's going to land whether he likes it or not. But just in meeting him, we already have a protagonist that we like. We don't even have to know why we like him. We just know that we do like him. There's something innocent about our friend Bilbo Baggins. So let's look at another one. All right, this is the beginning clip from Monsters University. And this is where we're going to meet Mike Wazowski. And he is a great, famous, funny little monster that we're going to meet here. And just notice his appearance, the way we look at him, how he talks to people. Notice the way other people look at him.
All of our dreams. Gladys, promise me you'll keep auditioning. Marie, Mr. Right is out there somewhere. Phil, keep using the ointment till that thing
They all
goes
look
away.
like, who are you? What is going on? We don't know you. Who talks like this? And everybody's like, wow. So already we have the underdog feel just from this first little instance of seeing him. We know that, okay, he is on his own here. He's young, happy look. He's even got a retainer in and got the whole world before him. He's small, unassuming, and you already get the idea that he probably doesn't have a lot of friends. So the fact that he doesn't have a lot of friends, that he's alone, that he's small, look at the size of this place that he's in. And we kind of get the feeling already that, wow, this place is going to be a little bit beyond him. He doesn't have friends. We wish he had friends because you and I, we would like to have friends. So, we've already feel a little bit of empathy maybe even some sympathy towards Mike Wazowski here, or Wazowski. And so what's funny here is that the first thing we see him really doing is he's trying to figure out where he's going to fit in. He's getting signed up, and anyway, so it's a very fun way to see the beginning of Mike Wazowski, that he doesn't really fit in, but he's excited. He's got a whole world, and there's some excitement to that, and we kind of are already hoping that he at least makes a friend, and so that would be good. So we kind of like him, and here he is on his own. He's got something strong about him, and at the same time, there's just something that we know is lacking in him already, that we're already feeling a bit of sympathy towards him. So now we're going to look at the beginning of Super 8, and this is one of my favorite examples of introducing a protagonist, the person that we're going to care about. And we start out with this great scene that says safety, a last day since day since last accident, and we know right off the bat that, oh no, there is been an accident, because they just took that down, and we'll see, there it goes. Oh no, there's been an accident. So it's the first thing that we see, and now the next shot we see a boy out in the cold, alone by himself, sitting on a child's swing set. He's holding what we'll discover is his mom's locket. His mom has been in an accident.
I'm so worried for that
and he's sitting
boy.
there alone. So already our heart is going out for him.
She was everything to him.
Jack's gonna step up. He's good, ma'am.
But he's never had to be a father before. I don't think he understands Joe.
How long did Elizabeth work there?
So here, we're meeting our protagonist. He's sitting on the swing. And now let's introduce even some conflict into this scene. We've got some guy showing up. I love how his car can't even turn off without making a bunch of noise, which is just more conflict. Now he's walking up. And clearly the kid knows that this guy is somebody. We just don't understand kind of what's going on. And just look, we're feeling horrible for the kid already. Somebody just needs to go and hug that little boy, because clearly he needs a hug. And now, add even more conflict. So we got the kid's father dragging the guy right back out 5 seconds later. So we know that to make a good protagonist, the protagonist has to want something. And already, the way that the father's looking at the son right now, we can tell that there's something there, something at least that's missing there between them. And he's holding his mom's locket, so clearly what the kid wants is his mom back, but that is something that he can't get back. And we're going to look down, we're going to see. And with that, we're out of the first beginning. So we have a character, we're already feeling sympathetic toward him, and we know what he wants, that he's got external and internal needs right off the bat. And so it's a good way to start the character. Okay, let's take a look at The Sandlot. And so here we have a little boy, our protagonist. He's out, he's gone onto the field, he's trying to make friends. He's made a choice to go out there even though he doesn't know anybody. And he hears something kind of scary, but he doesn't quite know what yet. Which this will ultimately be the antagonist of the film behind that fence. But meanwhile, what the scene is actually about is this boy is trying to make friends, but he doesn't know anybody. So he's walked onto this field, but they don't really even know that he's there until now. And so the boy, here comes the ball, and instead of catching it, the ball practically knocks him over, and oh no. The situation's already bad now. These kids, he doesn't even know, they're all laughing at him. Nobody likes to be laughed at. And so we know he's there. He's willfully trying to make friends, but now the conflict is he embarrassingly couldn't pick up the ball. He's just trying so hard. So there he is. So now he's got the ball. So it's time to redeem yourself, right? He failed to catch the ball. They're not going to be his friends if he can't catch. So he's just got to throw it back. But then that's when we reveal this poor kid doesn't even know how to throw a ball. Nobody has ever taken the time to throw him a ball. And so as the audience, we're already like, oh, we're feeling so awkward right now. Oh, no. And now they're laughing at him again. This really, look how much risk he put out there. He's like, if I go out here, maybe I'll make some friends. That's the good thing. But the risk involved is that now he's embarrassed himself and he just says his life is over and he runs out of the scene. So we already see that the character, we feel for him, our heart goes out for him. He's willful, he goes out there trying to make friends, he wants to make friends, and he has the chance to attain it, but at the risk of embarrassing himself. And in this scene anyway, the risk is greater. He fails and oh no, they don't love him and he runs away. So good example of a good protagonist in an opening sort of scene. Okay, so we're gonna look at Elf now. And what they do really great in this particular moment is that they show you the world, but then here is Elf, and we know immediately that he does not fit in. His size alone is enough where we know he doesn't fit in.
Hey, Ming Ming.
And here we find out he can't even do what normal elves do.
It's all right, buddy. Just how many Etch-a-Sketches did you get finished? Come on, buddy, how many?
I mean, he's trying to fit in. He wants to have friends. He wants people to like him, but
85?
well, his face alone says that he just can't do it. And now look, he's an outcast. Everyone's staring at him. Once again, we feel bad for him. It's an awkward moment.
915 off the pace.
Why don't you just say it? I'm the worst toy maker in the world. I'm a cotton-headed ninny muggins.
And he's feeling like he's an outcast. I mean, we naturally want him to be able to fit in because everybody has that longing to fit in and have friends and all of that. But here he doesn't fit in. He is out of the loop, and he is not one of them.
You changed batteries in the smoke detector?
You sure did. Triple A's. And in 6 months, you'll have to check them again.
So, you know, they're trying to make him feel better, but they're all kind of trivial things.
In a good way.
See, buddy, you're not a cotton-headed ninny muggins. You're just special.
And so, Buddy.
So here they're going to put him on a different task because, well, he couldn't fit in like a normal elf, and so they basically do this. One of my favorite scenes in this film is him trying to figure it out with these little, I don't even remember what they're called. But what's funny is we have a situation where he's trying to fit in and he can't, and so we naturally, nobody wants this job, nobody wants to have to do this. And so we are feeling plenty of empathy and sympathy toward this character of Buddy the Elf, and okay, so we're laughing. We'll look at another clip. Here's a look at Pirates of the Caribbean, where we meet Mr. Turner here, and he is waiting. We don't know anything about him. This is the first time we see him. And he's in a house, and oh dear, he's accidentally broken something. I like the way he just kind of hides it, and well, everything's fine. Don't look at me, I'm fine.
Good day, sir. I have your order.
All right, so we find out that he is a delivering person. He's delivering a sword.
The blade is folded steel. That's gold filigree laid into the handle. If I may.
So he knows his stuff as far as swords go.
Perfectly balanced. The tang is nearly the full width of the blade.
Impressive. Very.
So he's capable. He's a good swordsman.
Norrington's going to be very pleased with this.
Good craftsman. So that tells us a lot about it, but we still don't know anything that he wants. We don't know what his desire is. Seems to be a nice guy.
A craftsman is always pleased to hear his work is appreciated.
And now introduce, oh, look at this. He sees her from afar, and now,
I had a dream about you last night.
just look at his eyes. We realize he is in love with this girl. You can tell from his eyes. It's the opening scene, and the thing that he wants is right here. So we have the object of his affection, something that he is going to try to get, and he would like to communicate it, but he can't communicate it here. There's too much risk involved. He can't say what he wants because he's just a craftsman. She's clearly upper class, and so it's not going to work. So we meet him, and immediately we're like, oh, we want that guy to get the girl. It's just there. It's been one scene, but we already know that in the rest of the film, this film is going to be about a boy trying to get a girl, and so we're wrapped up into it. We want him to succeed. It's a feeling that resonates with people easily, and so from this point on, it's going to be good. Let's look at another protagonist from the Pirates of the Caribbean. This is where we meet Captain Jack Sparrow, and we meet him, and already, this is a man who's on top of the world, so to speak. Look at him, he's way up there, wind blowing. Must be a big man on a ship. And then we reveal, of course, okay, here's a guy. And now we reveal he's in a boat that's got water in it that's sinking. So we kind of feel bad for him. He's alone at sea on a boat that's sinking. That does not look fun. And now we reveal, okay, there's some hanging people, and we discover that it's pirates. They hang pirates. But here he takes off his hat to them. So it kind of shows us a little bit about him that, all right, yeah, he's a pirate, and he salutes the pirates here. So that tells us a little bit about him. And we have to like him. We don't know quite what he wants yet. But it's just funny because we've only had to know him 30 seconds. We can already tell he's going to be an interesting person to root for. All right, look at this. Everything's so majestic, so amazing, and then we realize, no, this is about as ridiculous as it gets. The guy doesn't even have a boat that can float. And now let's see a little more of his character real quick.
Hold up there, you! It's a shilling to tie up your boat at the dock. And I shall need to know your name.
What do you say to 3 shillings? And we forget the name.
All right, so now we see something. Okay, he's kind of a man of mystery.
Welcome to Port Royal, Mr.
We
Smith.
want to know what's that mystery about. We want to get to the bottom of that. So we're feeling something else. And also, look at that. He's also a little bit of a thief. So that should make a really interesting character to watch. So even though he's not our main protagonist, he is something that we're already going to kind of root for. We don't even know why we're rooting for it. It's just because he's so interesting, and we just can't help ourselves. So that's a good sign. And now let's end looking at protagonists by looking at Peter Parker.
It's all about a girl.
That's the object of his affections. We find that out real quick early on in this clip.
Mary Jane Watson. The woman I've loved since before I even liked girls. I'd like to tell you that's me next to her. Well, heck, I'd even take him.
And now look, we find out, oh my gosh, he's a little guy, he's got glasses on, he can't even get on the bus. So already on the scene, look, notice that the girl, that the object of his desire, gets him to stop the bus. And so now he's going to be able to get on, which is great. But look, people are throwing stuff at him. I mean, nobody likes him. He has no friends. And once again, just like the Mike Wazowski scene, we've got another scene on a bus where, look, the kids, none of them like him. None of them want to sit by him. And now we have a moment, oh, wait a minute. But at least he's got the girl who kind of likes him. I mean, she did help stop the bus, right? So the girl kind of, maybe he's got a shot, even though there's conflict. The boyfriend's there. Oh, no. And he's tripped. He's just looked like a fool in front of everybody, and the bus tries. And now we have one more quick glimpse of him there in front of the deal. You can see all the cool kids here at the front, and here at the very back, we got him, Nerd Boy, and the girl that he likes, and oh my goodness, she's looking at him. So this day might be getting better, and we're all like, oh my gosh, okay, maybe she does like him. And now, oh no, it's just really, now he looks even more like a fool. So right off the bat, he's just out of reach. No one's even noticing him. He's a fool. But we feel bad for him, and we just realize, wow, that girl is way beyond his reach. But there's part of us that once again reaches out to him as this is a boy loves girl story, and we want him to have an ability to, have a chance of winning over that girl. But let's face it, he has a long way to go, being who he is and being the way that people see him, or they don't even see him for that matter. So it's a great introduction to a protagonist. All these are examples of characters that you can like instantly from just looking at them. So we're going to take a moment now and we're going to talk a little bit less about the protagonist, and let's turn our attention a little more to the antagonist, his opposite or the evil villain of the story. Now, one of the great rules about how you write a protagonist as an antagonist is that the story will never be as fascinating or as compelling if the antagonist is not really, really bad. So the badder the antagonist and the more difficult he's going to make it for the protagonist, then the better the overall story is going to be. So we talked about a few things about our protagonist, and we can also say some similar things about the antagonist. So we'll see how they go. But a good way to look at it is that the antagonist is usually the opposite of the protagonist in most ways. Now, sometimes this isn't the case. You'll find some stories where the villain is a character that's very much like the protagonist. It's just their characters are very similar, but their choices may be different, and that's why one is good and one is bad. But whatever the case, the protagonist and the antagonist are their opposite sides of the coin. So let's talk about a few things. Well, we talked about as the protagonist, you have to love the protagonist, but the antagonist, in all honesty, the best way to write an antagonist is that you really have to have the desire to not like this person. This is the person that you should be sitting there in the audience squirming. So it can be a really evil, super villain, or in the case of like the movie Jaws, it can be a man-eating shark, and you do not like the shark. So the antagonist is completely opposite of the protagonist. You might like the protagonist, but nobody likes a man-eating shark. They're terrifying and they make you want to stay out of the ocean, and that is a bummer. So you have to love the protagonist, but the more that you dislike the antagonist, the more you dislike the villain, the better and more fascinating the story is going to be. We talked about how the protagonist has to be a willful character. He's got to willfully put himself into doing things. And in this case, they're going to be a lot alike. The antagonist is usually pretty willful as well. My writing seems to be just getting worse and worse as we go. So the protagonist is willful, but the antagonist is willful, but he is willful in the opposite direction. Whereas the protagonist is willfully going to go after his goals, the antagonist, his goal is against whatever the protagonist is doing. So in most stories, the villain is going to be trying to do the opposite thing of the protagonist, or at least trying to get in the way. So if the protagonist is trying to get this over here, the antagonist is either going to want to get in the way to prevent him from doing it, or get it first and keep the protagonist from getting it. So whatever the case, they're both going to be a willful character. So then we talked about the antagonist has to have some wants. He has to have some things that he wants. Well, the antagonist has got similar wants too. It's just they're going to be the opposite usually of whatever it happens to be that the protagonist, they want to stop it. And finally, the chance to achieve it, we'll just put achieve up here. The protagonist has to have a chance to achieve his goal in the story, whereas the antagonist, he's going to want to achieve stopping the protagonist from doing it. So in the end, the best way to look at this is there can only be one victor, because if they have diabolically opposed goals and they each have a chance to achieve it, well, there's tension there, because we know whoever achieves it, the other one is not going to achieve it. So they both are going to have those goals. They're both going to be going for it. But really, the best way to look at it is to say only one is going to get it. Only one is going to survive. In the case of Jaws, either the man is going to kill the shark and stop the shark from killing people, or the shark is going to eat the man, and that's not really good. So in the end, only one of them are going to walk away, and that is what creates the tension between the two characters. Another way that I like to look at it is that the antagonist, if you had the protagonist over here and the antagonist over here, the best way to write them is to have the antagonist a little bit smaller, a little bit weaker of a character than the antagonist. Or another way to put it would be the protagonist has less power than the antagonist. So in the case of Star Wars, when you have Luke Skywalker, he's just, a teenage boy on some planet, Tatooine. He's over there, doesn't even know who his parents are, and it kind of gets caught in this whole little mess. But who is he? He's a little pipsqueak blonde living on a desert planet, right? Meanwhile, you've got Darth Vader. I mean, he's all black. He's got the black mask, and he's breathing kind of funny, and he's robotic, and he's terrifying. He's super tall, and he has tremendous power. He's got a military behind him, and he can do the whole hand clenching thing. And so he is powerful, whereas Luke is not powerful. And the reason why this creates great tension is because how in the world can Luke ever rise to the level of Darth Vader? All right, so there's a tension created. So when you're writing a protagonist, he's usually smaller, usually going to be weaker or less powerful than the antagonist. In fact, the more it's kind of tipped in the antagonist's favor, the better, because again, the higher the climax is going to be, the higher the risk involved in accomplishing the goal for our protagonist. So we want him to win, but it needs to look really, really impossible for him to do that. And that's what creates a great, fascinating, emotionally compelling story to watch. Let's talk about a few other examples of antagonists. We talked about Jaws, we talked about Star Wars a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about, our fun little Hobbit friends in The Lord of the Rings. Their antagonists, it's funny, there's a bunch of antagonists involved. There's armies of Mordor, you've got Saruman, they're all kind of after them to prevent them from keeping their goals. But your biggest antagonist is the Eye of Sauron, the bad evil eye on the tower. And that is your one pinnacle villain. And notice you've got, again, a very small, literally small, weak, Frodo Baggins on the one side, and then you've got Mordor and the towers and all that other stuff on the other side. So the scales are definitely tipped there. But let's look at another thing. Like, how do you introduce an antagonist? How do you build it up so that it shows the difference in the scale between our antagonist is big, bad, and scary and powerful, and your antagonist is just not that way? Well, a great way to do that is most films will have a scene really early on where we get introduced to the antagonist. It will happen in some cases, Darth Vader shows up in the very beginning of the first movie and boom, he comes in, oh, he's so scary. Well, most of the time, in most books or most films, the antagonist is going to be introduced pretty early in the story and you're going to see who this person is. And so let's take a look at how even a simple villain can be made to look a whole lot worse. So let's look at this clip from The Sandlot. Now here's a clip from The Sandlot again. And this is how we're going to introduce ourselves to our villain or our antagonist. The big scary thing is they go in and they tell this story, and notice the immensity of size that they're going to build up the villain. They're going to make him, as we talked about, antagonist. It's going to be bigger, more powerful, stronger than the boy, way beyond his reach, way more powerful. There's no way they're ever going to be able to defeat this thing.
Turned the pup loose in the junkyard, and the pup was grateful.
And through the eyes of all the boys, this is an antagonist that just cannot be beaten. It's way beyond their power. Look at the size. Look at those ridiculous legs.
And so, in a few weeks, the pup grew into the beast, and he grew big, and he grew mean, so that he could protect the junkyard with only one thing on his mind: to kill everyone that broke in. And he did. And he liked it. A lot. The beast was the most perfect junkyard.
So the kid
dog
here,
ever lived.
you can tell he might be exaggerating it just a little bit. But notice the ability of hearing this legend of the beast is making the beast even more scary than maybe the beast actually is, as you find out later in the film.
173 guys. It's true. They never found a single body. Not one. Some people say they all got away, but we all know what really happened. The beast ate them. He ate them bone and all. The beast was too good at his guard dog job, so the police said he had to be retired. My grandpa, Squigman Palladors, was police chief back then, and he ordered Mr. Myrtle to turn his backyard into a fortress and chain up the beast and put him under the
So
house.
notice we're hearing a lot of information about the villain, the beast, and it might be a little greater than the reality of the situation, but it doesn't really matter because the point is that in the kids' minds, the beast obtains everything we've discussed as far as an antagonist goes. You've got a crazy huge dog that's all powerful next to them, and look at him. I mean, this kid doesn't have a chance.
Under that lean-to, dreaming of the time when he can break the chain and get out. Dreaming of the time when he can chase and kill again.
See, man, that's why you can't go over there. Nobody ever has, nobody ever will.
One kid did, but nobody ever seen him again.
That ain't true.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, this group of small kids, they don't have a chance.
He got eaten.
Nuh-uh. No. None of that's true. You guys are just making this up to scare me.
Oh, yeah? Stick your head out that window and, like, down.
Notice that everybody else kind of scoots back.
That night, I learned that more than 150 baseballs had gone over that fence, and not one of them was ever seen again. Even when some brave kid worked
Now
up
notice
enough
here,
courage
we
to
don't
take
actually
over.
see
Because when they went over,
the beast. The beast is now bigger in our minds. The villain is now bigger in our minds and more powerful in our minds than it actually is. So even though we don't actually see it, the villain is pretty bad news. So it's a great example of a villain tipping the scales. The kid's on one side, there's no way they have a chance, and you've got the beast on the other side who is bigger and badder because of the way that their minds have made him than anything they could handle.